Hey guys, Chris Story here. In this video today, I'll be covering 15 Moneyball trade targets that I'll be tracking during season 2021. To give a bit of an explanation of the Moneyball concept before I start, as this is something that I find there's often a bit of confusion around what it means. So, with all these players, I'm not including stars on the list. The whole point of this list is really to come up with players who are really going to be undervalued commodities by their current teams, and players really that you can acquire under what I would consider what their true value is. So that would be the general idea, and you really don't want to be paying too much for them. So they're basically the general criteria when you're looking at Moneyball targets. So the first one, and this is probably the one where I guess you could query the value, where you'd still likely be coughing up a first round pick. So I'm looking at a Tom Green. So for me, he's got the scope to be the premier first possession winner in the competition, where he just knows where to go to really get that first possession whenever there's a stoppage, just anywhere around the ground, particularly at centre bounces. He's just got a knack for it. He just knows where to go, and he's just there. Wherever the ball's going to land, he's there, and then he'll dish it out and then set something up. He'll set up play for his team. So that's really his game, and what he does on a special level, even above really anyone else that I'm seeing in the competition, and I think he can really get to that level. So, but then with some luck, he'll also add some forward craft as well, where hopefully he can become more of a marking target, kick a few goals as well. So fingers crossed he adds that as well. But in terms of inside craft, I think he's going to be a dead set gun. So yeah, definitely watch out for Tom Green. And if he doesn't establish himself as a clear best 22 player for GWS this year, I would be absolutely pouncing, and I would be aggressively pursuing him, because he's of that caliber where if you're a team like such as an Essendon, well, I would be trading for he even above, say, a Josh Dunkley. I think Tom Green's value can really be on that level. So yeah, he's definitely someone to be aware of. Next up, I've got Willem Drew. So here's someone, unless you're probably a Port Adelaide fan, you don't know much about him. So I think he's really got the scope to be a breakout player this year, but of course for Port Adelaide, he needs those opportunities at the senior level, and that's something that he hasn't really been receiving. So I really like his game. He's, in my opinion, probably one of the most aggressive players, if not the most aggressive, possibly even in the competition, as incredible as that is. And we've got the likes of your Jack Viney's, Toby Greens, you could go on with that list. But I think Willem Drew's right there with them, where as a contested ball winner, as a tackler, he's just got this real ferociousness in the way he approaches the game, and I really like that about him. But then as well as that, he's a really good mover. Skills, pretty reasonable, nothing really problematic there. So, and looking at his preseason game, although it was only against Adelaide, well, he still led Port Adelaide for contested possessions, clearances, tackles. So in terms of all the hard inside stuff, he's a really high level piece. And yeah, for me, completely underutilized. And if he's not best 22 for Port Adelaide, if I'm looking for some sort of midfield boost and I really want that inside division to be improved, well, Willem Drew is more of a budget version to a Tom Green, and I think is someone where, again, he can be a really important piece for you. And if you don't have to spend up too much for him, I think he'd be really a great get, and really that true personification of what a Moneyball trade target really is. So next up, I've got a Jack Sinclair. So he's someone where through the first half of last season, he was dropped by the Saints, and then he had to really earn his way back into the team. But he's someone where in the past, he's even been part of the Champion Data Team of the Year. So he's someone from an analytics perspective, and if you actually assess his whole game critically, he's actually a really well-rounded player, where he's got the speed, he'll hit the scoreboard, good pressure, good tackler, good skills. He can win his own ball, so he's really got a well-rounded game, and I think there's a lot that people just don't realise about his game, and a lot of people just don't look at him closely enough. So for a Sinclair, he's been good on a wing in the past, but from what I'm seeing in the preseason, you can actually have him running off half-back, generating drive from there, or you can have him in the centre square, and again, even there he can have an impact. So really there's three positions you can have him having an impact, and just as that, I guess, rotational piece who can really move between those positions and play where you need him to play, I think is going to be a genuine impact player. And I think this year, probably for St Kilda, he really solidifies himself as a genuine top 10 sort of player on their lists, so that's something to look for. But if for some reason he gets dropped or sort of gets out of favour again for whatever reason, well, I would absolutely be pursuing a Jack Sinclair, because I think he's just too good to be that sort of player who gets dropped. I think he can be a genuine top 10 player on most lists. So, and again, if you can get him for next to nothing, well, you've absolutely done fantastic out of that. Next up, I've got a Tom Fullerton. So here's one where it's a bit more speculative, but coming from a basketball background, having not been in the competition for very long, he looks awfully good. So when you're looking at a 2-meter guy where he's got the ground level craft, he's got the hands in close that he has, he's highly developable. Already he's showing signs for Brisbane forward of centre, so again, that's promising there. And behind sort of, I guess, an Oscar McInerney, well, he's not at this stage looking like he's going to get ruck minutes. So if, say, when a Dan McStay comes back from injury, and if a Tom Fullerton is to lose his spot and be sort of knocked out of that best 22, well, I would be pursuing a Fullerton. And whether it's as a number one ruck role, I would be considering developing him into that sort of role, or it could be as that, I guess, relieving ruck who plays mostly forward. I'd be open to considering him in either role. So I think there's still quite a considerable amount of upside, and the fact that even a few years in, he's already looking really AFL ready and looking really comfortable at AFL level, the sky's the limit. And I think really year on year, he's going to keep improving and impressing. So yeah, he's someone I would definitely be very comfortable getting, assuming the cost isn't too high there. So next up, we've got a Riley Collier-Dawkins. So he's someone where I've still got a great deal of faith in his game, and looking at his preseason signs, he looked really lively every time he was anywhere near it. So he's a good sort of height around that 190 mark, but he has the speed, athleticism, that burst, but then good skills as well. So he's a really nice, well-rounded type. You could even possibly put him forward and maybe he could take a mark and kick a goal. So you've got a lot of opportunities with him. And just without having sort of had a senior opportunity yet, I think he's really too good not to have played yet. And if he can't get regular games for Richmond this year, I would absolutely be really pursuing him and really hoping that I can get him and really convince him to come aboard and really make the case that, look, if you come to my club, you'll be a genuine starting best 22 midfielder. And I think that would be a pretty appealing case to make for someone who really hasn't had an opportunity yet. I'm sure he'll get some opportunities at some point this year, but yeah, if he doesn't become that regular, well, then maybe that's the window where maybe you can go after him. So Tom Atkins. So coming into this year, I wasn't really necessarily a fan. As a forward, I thought, look, he can provide some pressure, he can win the ground balls, has that contested side, but he's not really doing a lot. So just not necessarily that impactful player, not a natural forward, but seeing what he's doing behind the ball, I think he's really terrific. So he's winning his one-on-ones, he's winning the contested ball like mad, but he's also providing drive and rebounds. So for me, I think this year for Geelong, he could become really that third best general defender behind the likes of a Tom Stewart and a Mark Blitzarves. So if for whatever reason he can't establish himself in defence as that best 22 player, I would absolutely be really trading for him quite aggressively and looking to just say, hey, we're going to get you and we're going to put you as a general defender and you're the guy we want and you've got a guaranteed best 22 spot here. And if you do that, I think you make a compelling case to him. And again, given his age, given his status in Geelong's team, if he's not going to be that best 22 player, you can get him pretty cheap. So, and I think he can really be a meaningful piece. So, yeah, given sort of that caliber of player that I'm sort of projecting him to be, he's someone I'm really going to be watching closely this year. So next up, Jordan Clark. So he's someone where in that same preseason game against Essendon, he looked awfully good. Atkins and Clark, for me, were the two best players on ground that day. So they're both on this list for a reason. So providing that endless run and carry, taking the kickouts, hitting the scoreboard, whether he's on a wing, whether he's on a half-back flank, I think he's really got a future at AFL levels. So I'm really sort of enthused by what I've seen so far, and if he has a good season but can't quite establish himself as that best 22 player, well, I would be absolutely making a play for Jordan Clark. So I think he's got a bright future ahead. So next up are Michael Frederick. So again, here's another sort of pre-season breakout type. Unfortunately, he'll be missing the start of the year, and he might be missing about a month or so there. But yeah, just looking at what he was doing on a wing, just providing that run, taking on the game, hitting the scoreboard, pushing forward, I think he's really got a lot of tools to be a really influential player. So just being sort of that outside runner. So I'm pretty excited by him. You could even use him as a sort of, I guess, pressure forward, that speedy type, hits the scoreboard. He gives you some options. So look, he's someone you wouldn't definitely be investing in yet. You'd really want to see him produce a few strong performances at AFL level before being fully sold. But yeah, the signs from that one preseason game suggest he really needs to be on your radar as someone you're watching if you're a club and you're really looking for that injection of speed. And particularly with the way the game's going, with the new man on the mark rules, with the AFL really wanting to speed up the competition, make it look a bit more attractive, well, that's where the likes of a Michael Frederick and those types who can really take on the game really, get increased value based on where they would have been in previous years. So yeah, here's someone definitely to watch. Coleman Jones. So given his incident for Richmond last year, he seems a bit out of favour there, but he's someone where he's a genuine ready to go, whether it's as a key forward or a ruckman. So strong marking force, takes his contested marks, covers the ground well, quite mobile, so not necessarily an athlete, but still covers the ground well. So yeah, I like his game, and he's someone where, whether it's as a relieving ruck who mostly plays forward, plays a few minutes as that sort of resting ruck, I think he's got the scope to do that, or he could be, as required, a genuine number one ruck. So he's a ready-to-go player for Richmond. It'll be interesting to see if he gets opportunities this year, and if so, how many. But yeah, if he can be had at year's end for nothing, if he's, say, a delisted free agent, I'd be pretty keen and interested, assuming he takes a few more steps of development this year. Bayley Williams for West Coast, so athletic ruckman, can play forward, possibly a little on the undersized side for a ruck, but yeah, look, very athletic, and there's a lot of potential there. He's someone where maybe this year even he becomes a best 22 player, and maybe he passes a Nathan Vardy, would be my suspicion. So he's got potentially those chances, and again, a bit like a Coleman Jones, if I'm looking for that key forward, ruck, either or position, there's some scope there where, look, if you can get him for cheap, then maybe he's a potential interest. So, and I'd be really tracking with him in particular his rate of improvement, where if he takes some strides and the rate of improvement's there, then that's when I'm really interested, and that's when I'd be making the play for him. Next up, we've got a Devin Robertson. So he's someone where he played round one last year for Brisbane and was, in my opinion, pretty unlucky not to, I guess, get that spot back and receive more senior opportunities. He won the best player during the under-18 championships the other year, in the same year with Matt Rowell. So the fact that he can do that and he's not a best 22 player, well, he's someone where clearly he's got game. And he was racking it up, and yeah, he's a really good midfielder, but with Brisbane, look, they've got a reasonable enough midfield where there just hasn't been the opportunities for him. So maybe with the Rayner injury, maybe that opens up opportunities this year. We'll have to wait and see, but again, if he doesn't earn that regular spot, or if he doesn't play at all, well, that would be sort of opportunity would be what I would be thinking there. And he'd be someone where, again, if I want a productive midfielder who can really rack it up, win his own ball, just play a really good midfield game, well, yeah, he's someone I'd be very comfortable adding to my list. And again, if you can do it for moderately cheap, well, I think that's a really good opportunity. Next up, I've got a Will Gould. So I think he was pretty stiff not to get games for Sydney last year, and doesn't look like he's going to be getting games to start this year either. So again, for me, what's that tell me? That tells me opportunity, where we've got another underutilized player right here. So big booming kick, he can kick at 60, maybe even 65. He'll provide a little bit of run. So he's almost that 80-metre player where he'll run at 50, he'll kick at sort of your 60 thereabouts. So yeah, he can really do quite a lot of damage. But then really strong body, very mature, AFL ready type. So he gives you options. So he gives you another kick out option. He'll win his one-on-ones. You can play him deep in defence. You can play him on tools if you want to, or third tools. Just gives you options. And I think he's a genuine AFL caliber player, but he just hasn't had those opportunities. So again, if he's, say, a delisted free agent, or if you're just spending a late pick on him, I'd be very comfortable adding him. I think he's a potential asset if you're really looking for that general defender who can add some more quality in defence if you're down those numbers. Sydney Stack, phenomenal first year. Based on all the champion data information, look, he was basically based on their metrics, the best player in the competition, remarkable as that sounds. So playing both forward and back really had an impact. I think he's got the scope to actually play a sort of a Shy Bolton sort of role through the midfield. That's sort of the game he played as a junior, where, look, he wasn't ultra high sort of production, but he was someone where highly influential. He could win first possession, but then really do a lot of damage with it. So being someone who really, whether he's midfield, forward, back, can really have an impact and make magic happen with ball in hand, well, he's someone that I like. And look, hub life, obviously, he really struggled with last year, so that's really why he's out of favour. But if he doesn't really re-establish himself this year as a clear best 22 player, well, I'm really tracking with interest. So I'm not necessarily going to say I'd be committed to him yet. I'd really want to make sure that, look, he's sort of doing all the professional things that he needs to be doing. And but if he's doing that, if he's showing signs of development, if he's playing good footy, well, I'd be definitely interested. So Josh Caddy, I feel like he's really been underutilised and wrongly utilised for a number of years by Richmond. His play, I think it was 2018, was really strong, where he was playing as a forward, averaged 2 goals a game. My opinion was he was as good as Jordan De Goey in that year and De Goey's best year. So playing that same sort of game, just winning his one-on-one, strong mark, hitting the scoreboard, I really liked what he was doing. But pre-season signs on a wing, it's the first sign of life on a wing where I'm thinking he's actually pretty good in that sort of role too. So look, I still like him more as a forward than anything, and that's where I would recruit him, sort of as that general forward, that sort of forward pocket, medium marking forward. So it just gives you another real option inside 50. But yeah, certainly through the midfield, he can play a little bit also. So he can be that rotation piece for me. So, but yeah, look, I think he'll re-establish himself for Richmond anyway this year. So he might not be a relevant target at the end of the year. But if he doesn't, I guess, hold his position in the best 22, well, he'd be someone where I'd be very comfortable, whether he's a delisted free agent, you can spend a late pick to get him. I'd be interested in adding him to my list to improve a front half potentially. And then we've got a Tom McDonald. So the annoying thing in Melbourne's situation is, well, they have so many key backs that they can't use him back there, and that's his best position. So I think it's really going to be another wasted year for Tom McDonald, where he just won't be allowed to play his best footy as a result. So when you've got the likes of Stephen May, you've got Jake Lever, you've got Adam Tomlinson, assuming Tomlinson's playing back, just having those 3 guys, well, how can you fit McDonald and those guys? It's really, you have to choose who would be in, who would be out. But looking back at what McDonald was doing in his prime before he moved forward and when he was a key back, well, he was playing Rance quality football. Different style of game, obviously, but he was an interceptor. He provided a bit of rebound, just found a lot of footy. So, yeah, look, I think he can be across sort of centre-half back, a real asset for a team, assuming he was allowed to move back to that position and really had time to readjust to what really was, by a comfortable margin, his best positions. So, yeah, if you're a sort of team contending, you need that position, well, I'd be going straight after Tom McDonald. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you were a list manager, let me know who would you be targeting from rival teams and who would you be watching. That would be something of interest to me. Maybe you've got some names that maybe even I haven't thought of. So, yeah, always up for the discussion, and yeah, I'd be interested in some more names if you've got some for me. But if you haven't already, make sure you give me a like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for future updates, and see you in the next video.